It's my God. Good morning, everybody. Congratulations on waking up. Waking up and getting yourself physically into this room by 8 a.m. I salute you. Your co-attendees did not have as much success at arriving at 8 a.m. So what we are going to do is we're going to be very accommodating and start this session at 8:30, so in 10 minutes time. But this gives me a chance to tell you that the tea break will be from 11:15 to 11:30, and lunch will be from 1:15 to 2 p.m., and then we head into our closing ceremony. We also have a room on the ground floor, the first floor as it's known here, for your luggage. So if you're thinking, where do I put my luggage? We have a room for that. Please ask one of the ushers and they will tell you where that room is. So in 10 minutes time, we will resume our plenary for day 3 and start that plenary for day 3. So please talk amongst yourself. If you've got attendees who are just outside, tell them we're starting in 10 minutes time. They're coming this way. We will start our plenary in 10 minutes time. And again, thank you so much for being here on time. I appreciate you. See you soon. Good morning. We made it. Day 3 of WomenLift Health Global Conference 2024. I can tell who's had coffee and who hasn't. I love that. This 3-day conference wouldn't be possible without our main sponsors, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Co-Impact, and also RBM, end malaria. We thank them every day that we spend time in our workshops, our parallel sessions, our plenary sessions as well. Thank you for making it super early. We are just adjusting some times later on in the day to make sure that we can have a full plenary, because this plenary is going to be really important. Speaking of important things, in your takeaway bag, there was a flash drive. That was not for you to put in your documents and whatever you wanted to use it for, okay? There's information on that flash drive. I thought it was just a spare flash drive, but it's not. So on that flash drive, when you open it up, inside you will find research for why investment in leadership in women in health is critical, from WomenLift Health, from the Gates Foundation as well. That research is really well worth looking into. It's got the takeaways as well. So that flash drive, do not put it into your little container for all the flash drives that you've had from various different conferences around the world. That flash drive has got really important information. I am so looking forward to this plenary session because I am not moderating it. I get to be a panelist, which is so rare and so exciting for me to do that. The panel lineup, apart from myself, is excellent, and I know you're going to enjoy it. With apologies to Tina Turner, male allyship, what have men got to do with it, okay? Somebody had a good day when they came up with that title. Congratulations. I'm going to invite the moderator and the panelists for this conversation up on stage to join us right now. Our moderator is Dr. Jacqueline Cthulhu, Board Director of HHIBV, and she will get our conversation started in just a moment. Please make it easy to get on stage at 8 a.m. on a Monday morning. And before you meet the panelists, I am going to share with you a video about male allyship. What does it mean to people? Let's take a look.
Allyship is important because it brings in a level of humility. Humility in the sense that not all of
Can you hear me? All right. That was the teaser, the trailer. Do we have the video? Or was that it? Was that it? Okay, let's go back. Try again. It's a Monday morning.
that the younger people bring to us, we learn from our seniors, and with that allyship, we're able to look at what the problem is, look at what the possible solutions are, and then take it.
Allyship is so critical in women's health because it means, most importantly, that we don't walk alone. When we stand together as allies, we know that mountains are moved. We can not only ensure that changes occur for the good of health of entire communities, but also for the benefit of women, but that those changes are accounted for and that they're sustained.
I believe allies need to be like sponsors, creating opportunities, providing resources and networks so that women leaders can thrive and understand and navigate power dynamics, also helping them get like political savviness. And also it's not just about like being mentors, it's like really creating pathways, because I don't think women need skills, they just need opportunities.
Partnership and collaboration between the two genders, female and males, in framing the problems that affect female reproductive health and sexual rights and equality.
Speaking about people when they're not in the room, it means opening doors for them, it means creating opportunities for them.
It's important to me because it lifts everybody.
So allyship is very important because in an organization that supports employee to grow, I think women are really part of the global health network, and we need those men allies to really support the women in organizations.
Breaking and redefining gender stereotypes that have always been oppressive.
It's something that helps us to come together
lift one another, and amplify the impact together and for a much more equal world.
It's really important to support women, empowering women to be able to be equals in the society.
I'm rooting for allyship because I believe that allyship creates spaces where women can thrive and optimize their potential.
Allyship is standing for something and what people represent. And at this point, when I talk about male allyship, it's male solidarity, standing with women and ensuring that women are represented and their voices are heard.
So, yeah, Dr. Berry, I know we're here for the women's movement. So, what does male allyship mean to you?
Well, to say it simply, I would say that a man empowers a woman empowers himself.
Absolutely. And yes, that is what male allyship means to us. It's like we work together to uplift each other. It's not just about women, it's all of us.
I think it's time for men to move away from the cultural thing and let women lead.
I believe allyship is extremely important, whether it is a women allyship or male allyship, because essentially these gender issues are not for women, it is the human issue. And when there's a human issue, male and female are equally responsible to come on same board and fight for the right cause.
It gave me an opportunity to collaborate with each other, to interact with each other, and to formulate groups to work on specific issues that are related to health of women.
It's about men working with women in this journey to ensure that we have gender equity and also we eliminate some of the diseases that are very difficult and deliberating to women.
It means having men support women in leadership roles and men supporting women when it comes to sexual reproductive health and rights choices.
I believe in allyship. I believe that if we women can be given a chance and supported by our men, we can do much better and we can make our world a better place.
Good morning. Can you hear me now? Not yet. Not yet.
Good morning, everyone. We are finally on. So, welcome to this session, the last plenary of this wonderful conference. So, my name is Dr. Jacqueline Kitulu. I am a practicing family physician, and I'm also a board director on several health-related panels. And most important, I am an alumni of WomenLift Health, the inaugural East Africa cohort. So I will be moderating this panel, which is an interesting panel. I'll be moderating it, but also participating in it a little different. Why not? And you see the first difference, we have our main moderator being a panelist. So there we are. So our members, I'll introduce them. They have extensive CVs and you can read their profiles. But on my left, I have Dr. Vessel Vandenberg. He's a Senior Advocacy Officer, Equimondo Center for Masculinities and Social Justice. And followed by Dr. Polan Basinga. He's the Director, Africa, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And Dana Hovik is the Chief Executive of Mary Stops, but former Director at the Hewlett Foundation and Gates Foundation. And finally, our lady moderator of the conference, Femi Oke. She's an international journalist and co-founder of Moderate the Panel. So I'm moderating someone who's a founder of Moderate the Panel. I'm in trouble. So this panel really on male allyship, and I love the voice box because that really has given an opening into what we are discussing. And basically we're just looking at, on this pathway to reimagining leadership, both men and women will have to be engaged. And in our global health field, we know that women make up only just a quarter of the leadership, despite making up 70% of the workforce. So they must be active players in generating systemic changes to correct this imbalance. And this is what we hope to explore within this panel. So even as we've sandwiched these wonderful male allies between us, I think I'll start with you, Femi, because I mean, very many people have described what male allyship is. But what is the importance of male allyship? And reflecting from your career journey, I mean, it's a totally different journey from ours, but what is the importance of male allyship?
I was thinking last night about how can I be on a panel with Vessel and Pauline and Dana, because their work is so extraordinary in changing culture, changing hearts and minds, getting the information, the research, the data for that, experiential. And I thought, what do I even have to offer? And then I thought about my work and my job, and I hosted a program on Al Jazeera called The Stream for a decade, global current affairs program. And about 5 or 6 years ago, we decided to count how many men and how many women we had on the TV show. And we were very progressive. We covered stories of parts of the world that didn't usually get covered. We went back to stories. So we were very confident that we would be at least 50-50. When we started to count, we had about 42% of every guest over a year would be a woman, and the rest would be men. We were shocked, and we thought, okay, we are the most progressive show on Al Jazeera. We can't even get 50-50. How do we change that? And so my male executive producer said, over at the BBC, there's a broadcaster called Ross Atkins, and he started the 50-50 campaign, which is 50% of women journalists at the BBC, 50% of journalists should be male. 50-50, gender equality. He'd taken that campaign and said, any other network or broadcaster who wants to do that, come join us. So Ross Atkins, who's a really well-known male broadcaster at the BBC, inspired my executive producer in Washington, in Al Jazeera, to start a 50-50 campaign in a team of mostly women, so one gentleman in about 98% of women, who led us to count, to check every year, every quarter, were we on our goal for 50-50? Last year, we had 60% of women experts on the stream and 40% of gentlemen. We slightly overcorrected. But within Al Jazeera, we were probably just about right because the rest of the network didn't follow. A man who came up with an idea, who saw that there was gender inequality, did something about it, inspired another man, the other side of the world, to do it, and inspired us as gender equality advocates to do that work. This is an exceptional man who can say, we need to fix a system and let's do something about it. To this day, he's my favorite boss. I admire him greatly, and the lessons he taught me about how do you create equality, it's perfect that it would come from a male ally. So that's what I was thinking about yesterday, how it's impacted not just me, but actually all the young people who watch the stream, who grew up watching TV and will see brain surgeons and rocket scientists and political analysts who are women. On TV, nobody says anything because that's normal, right? And that is the power of a male ally.
Thank you so much, Femi. It's interesting, the image you've portrayed there, and as we're just sitting here waiting to come up, one of the panelists, I won't say which one, said it's very strange to be a minority. It's very odd. But I mean, that's what you're sort of bringing out there. So I'll move on to you, Vessel. So is there any data? We are discussing, we have the imagery and we have the panelists feeling, I'm a minority here, but what we see and we see in the sector, is there any data? Is there any research? Or is it all just anecdotal? We want to hear what you have to say about that.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline. I think what the data is telling us is that it's really important to, in addition to calling men out and holding men accountable for supporting gender equality, to call men in to the gender equality process, and to also really frame male allyship in workplaces as something that benefits men as well as women within the workplace. So a few data points that might be useful. Equimundo has been working on various studies over the years. We're almost completing a study in the workplace on male allyship in workplaces supported by the Gates Foundation. And I would really encourage everybody to look out for that when that comes out in a month or so. So the first one is that more than 50% of men in the US, based on the State of America's men data, reported feeling lonely, depressed, and that proportion was higher for young men. So we were just talking earlier in the speakers lounge about young men's experiences and boys. So that's one reference point. The second one is that in this conference, and I think the data shows us, the barriers that women face in the workplace are often not only linked to what happens in the workplace, but what happens at home. And the burden of care, to use the word burden deliberately in this context, in South Africa, my country, our statistical bureau found that the main reason that women are not participating in the labor force is the expectation that they are homemakers. So PwC has called this the motherhood penalty. So that is a major barrier to address. And then from our own research in the State of the World's Fathers report, I'm going to end on some good news, Jacqueline. We found that fathers across 17 countries, we had just over 12,000 respondents, fathers who are employees in workplaces are also willing to step away from career opportunities to pay attention to caregiving and caregiving responsibilities. So that's the good news. For example, taking a pay cut, doing overtime, or taking unpaid leave in order to be available for paid leave or care leave. And that was really encouraging. Of course, as before, and as I've mentioned, the ratio of women respondents was higher. So more women than men responded that is something they'd be willing to do. But the men was just over half of all men who responded. So that was really encouraging to us.
A very interesting concept, men being taking care, men in care, and hearing the research and studies about it. But I loved what you said, calling men in. We have these discussions between ourselves as the women, and yet the men need to be part of inside that discussion, not from the periphery, but literally inside. Paula, in your role within global health institutions, I know those in power tend to be men. Many of the managers are men. What is the model of a good male ally? What especially in that context where you come from, what have you seen as models of male allies? What can we learn in terms of what it means to be a good male ally in that institution or setting?
Thank you very much, Jacqueline. First, let me just thank WomenLift for inviting us here and having us to this panel. We were all thinking about how great an opportunity it is to just share with you and learn from you and discuss with you, and also to be back in Tanzania. For me, it has been quite a long time since I was here. I think the first thing I will say is, I grew up in DRC. I'm from Rwanda, did my medical school in Rwanda, moved to the US to do my graduate studies, and then went back to work in Rwanda in Africa. And then got an opportunity 12 years ago to move and work in the US at the Gates Foundation. And I was learning and trying to find myself in this global health world, which is a weird world, because when you think about it, let me just give very concrete few examples. We were traveling one day with 3 people, myself as a black male, and a younger program officer who was a white male, and then a older woman of color who was our boss. And as we were going to Africa, in a country that I'm not going to name, it was just fascinating to see how people are looking at us. She was our boss, but our African colleagues and people, they would just take the program officer because it was white and put him first. And then they would take me second, and then her third. It was just, like that. But then we talked about it. I think one thing that is really lacking is male talking about allyship among ourselves, openly. So we went back to the hotel, and then we said, did you see what is happening? And then we say, oh, yeah. And the white guy talked about it. He said, oh, my goodness, I'm so embarrassed. They have no idea that you guys pay my salary. You guys make my performance. The next day, we changed that. Because I think if we can talk more about those kind of things, I think it will really provide very concrete examples. So, but the ability to talk about it is that just in global health, most of managers happen to be male because they can share drinks after hours, they can discuss, they can be pushy, it not means that they are more smarter than the women, right? But we happen to be there. But like when you are there as a male, what are you actually doing to actually lift others? But I think it's just the first thing is the basic of management. Those three people I'm saying were all reporting to this guy. I'm going to embarrass him. I don't know if you remember. Dana Hovig used to be my manager at the Gates Foundation. I joined the Gates Foundation 12 years ago, and I joined Dana's team. He was the director of integrated delivery. And I was this, young, I will brag a little bit, talented medical doctor, but very shy in the US corporate culture, because there is, if you work hard, you push hard, you'll make it happen, right? It's very pushy. You need to know who sent that email, who speak first, who show up, who has the information, who can hold this, etc. Then I was very shy there. I was like, what is this place, my goodness? And I would just, be quiet. And then one day, I don't know if you remember this, it was my performance review. I was a senior program officer. I went to Dana's office for my performance review. I've prepared everything. And then he said, no, Paula, can we go for a coffee? We went to the atrium. If you remember that. I went down because he wanted to bring me to a very safe and neutral place. We sat there, offered me coffee, we sat, etc. And he wrote one of the most comprehensive performance review I've ever received in my, at that time it was 15-year career. I still have that copy then, I can send it to you. And it was, what is, good about you? So he has asked people what is good about Paula, and then what is Paula challenged with. And then one thing that you told me was, Paula, you are loved, but you are not respected. You can be better than this. And then you taught me, etc., management 101, right? And that completely changed my view of management. And I started doing that to my direct reports up to today. It helped me to become a deputy director and then a director, etc. I think we need to first be a good manager for everyone. And then, if you're a good manager, you can actually see now the women and say, this is this is how I can help my male colleagues. And then you can even try to see how women are seen in the community, right? In Africa, so I was in another country representing the foundation, and you can tell the leaders in the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Finance, when you go, they look at the boss, the male, and they want to talk to you. But you know that the person who will actually follow up, who's in charge, is a male, is a woman. But if you can tell them and say, oh, I will consult with my colleague because she's actually in charge, she will get back to you. They will be like, oh, really? Who's the colleague? Dr. So-and-so. They're like, oh, they'll be like, okay, good. Or if you meet over coffee or over drink and you want to make a decision, say, oh, you know what? Let me get back to you on Monday because I need to talk for because she's a mother, she's a wife, or she's a young girl. She can't just go and hang up with male in the, at night, etc. So just thinking about those things, talking about it, and then taking action, I think it can really help.
Am I allowed to ask a question?
Absolutely.
Can't help it, it's in my DNA.
Absolutely.
Paula, when you say, I will get back to you after I've spoken to my female superior, what is the face that you see on the person you say it to?
It depends. A smart male will say, wow, respect that. A dumb male will say, oh, I thought you were the powerful one. So then you can just show them like being powerful is being humble, is actually sharing credit to others. So there are actually people who are doing the work. Most of the time we don't do the work. When you're a manager, you're just there, helping, making things happen, but there are people, including the people we sometimes call our assistant, I call them our colleagues, who are fixing things, who are part of things, etc. They're actually doing the work. But when you you do that, like smart male, sometimes they will go and think about it and act differently. The good thing to, because males sometimes will have a lot of ego, you need to touch their ego, but you don't want to see their reaction there. We need to get them to go and think and probably quietly changing. If you do that, then you'll just get more male allies.
Very powerful. And actually, as you say that, you've made me think back to my own career. And within the profession, I am the first female president of the Kenya Medical Association. And that was between 2016 and 2020. And I must say it's thanks to a male ally, because the association was, as most medical associations, they're old boys clubs. They're senior doctors, they are male, because the majority of those in the profession then were men. And when I stood for president, I was younger, way younger than I am now, and a female. And it was all very odd, they almost couldn't tell how to engage with the situation. But I had these male allies who said, no, we have seen the work you've done in the Women's Association. You can do this. We will stand behind you. We will support you. And it's so important, that bit you say about speaking up, speaking up. Because once I was elected, it wasn't easy. I had a male competitor, and when I won, he actually even took me to court. So yes, there was a court injunction on me for my winning, very flimsy grounds, but all the other senior male doctors stood up and said, no, she won fair and square. But even through the leadership journey, now, subsequently I'm now president, comments that would come through, I started doing a whole lot of many other things and got into leadership, even within the Red Cross, and I was appointed the first deputy governor. And the men within the group, some of them would say, aren't you taking on too much? Won't your family suffer? And as I encountered such things, men spoke up. I did not ask them to speak, but immediately they would respond. And some of the other men would say, did Dr. Kitulu complain about struggling with the multiple roles that she's taking? She hasn't. We should be celebrating her. We should be excited about it. We shouldn't be, trying to bring her down. So the bit you talk about, talking about, speaking up for the women, really critical. And that gentleman who was told that, that conversation was shut off after he made that comment, but I think he went back and thought through and realized, it doesn't work right that way. So speaking up, really important. But anyway, as we go on from there, let's hear from you, Dana. Again, and you've been a role model to Polan as well. From his narration of the story, because male allyship is also role modeling. Other men learning from other male leaders, what they need to do in such a situation. But how do you activate male allyship in the institutions? And because that's important, there can be this one-on-one, but what about how do we translate it at institutional level?
Thanks, Jacqueline. And I have to admit, I never imagined I'd be sitting in front of 500 or 600 people talking about a performance review. But Pauline, thank you. That really touched me. And it's a privilege to be on this panel. It's a privilege to be here. And I've learned a lot over the last couple of days, and really just increased my own knowledge about the challenges, the opportunities, the potential in this room. And related to that potential, I was thinking and reflecting on some things I wanted to say and how to make them relevant to you as women leaders and future leaders in your relationship with male allyship. And I think the one takeaway, the headline that I'll start with, and then I'll back into the why, is that you, women leaders, have the power and the agency in a relationship to male allies. You have the power to provoke action, I think. And the reason I say that is because if we back up a little bit, I think of men as potential allies in three buckets. The first is the antis, and we want to marginalize and make them an increasing minority. The second are those who are apathetic maybe aware, maybe not aware. And then the third bucket, the one that I think that is most important for this room, is those who are aware but not active, those who are active but not yet advocates, or those who are advocates and really quite vocal. And how do you switch them on to then marginalize the antis? And I think when one thinks about behavior change, the key to behavior change is getting inside somebody's head, your target audience, and touching their heart. And so I'm going to let you inside my head for a moment as a male ally. So I was a bit nervous coming here as a male ally, and I think most male allies are nervous. We're a bit fearful of doing the wrong thing, of saying the wrong thing, of being judged, of and so what do? We end up being silent, even though we may want to say something or do say something. Now, that's not your problem, that's my problem. We're not victims in this. But nonetheless, we need to be understood, I think, with carrying around that nervousness that we want to do the right thing, but we don't want to come off as patronizing or condescending. That's our relationship to women. Our relationship to other men is also complex. So I was through, frankly, a lot of male privilege, white male North American privilege, I was moved to a very senior position, one of the top four leaders in an organization, an INGO based in Washington, D.C. There's about 2,000 people in the organization, all white North American males. And I just saw how wrong this was, and I saw how the lack of diversity, the lack of diverse views and experiences was just making this organization much weaker than it could be. We were missing so much by being so male and North American male-centric. And so I started to advocate for women in leadership positions, and again, I'm not trying to play the victim here, but I got made fun of. They made a t-shirt with a nickname for me and gave it to me in a small room. And even now, I mean, it just hurts to remember that. And I vowed in that moment to not be that and not replicate that in other organizations if I had the privilege to lead an organization. So I share that because men, I think male allies, want to do the right thing, but we're not always quite sure when to step in, when to step up, when we can do something constructive rather than patronizing or condescending. And so to circle back to my headline, we want to be led. Even as a CEO of an organization with 8,000 people, I wanted to be led. I wanted to be informed about what were the systemic and structural issues that were keeping women and other diverse leaders from moving up, from realizing their whole potential. And so if you look at us as they need my voice, they need my ideas about action, then I think it changes the power dynamic between you and the perceived or real hierarchy. We need your voice. Please lead.
Absolutely, and that's really powerful sharing in terms of, you know, speaking up again and being the change initiator, you know, being the one in a position of power. You can change that. I mean, feel free to jump in, Polan, you know, with your experiences.
See, what Dana did, he edited out the pain of that story, and the pain of the story was in the nickname that they gave you, and they made a t-shirt and put the nickname on the t-shirt. Are you comfortable enough to share that with us?
The t-shirt? I burned it.
I feel the t-shirt is long gone. It's lost in the 90s.
Yeah, I didn't bring it, but they called me Gender Boy, and Gender Boy was on the front, and GB was on the back, and it was a nice little ceremony, and I was just crushed. So yeah.
And that's the part of it, that as a male ally, sometimes you're going to face opposition, and yours was literally even giving you a name for it, but standing firm even through that this is a change we must make. I don't know, from your other organizations, what systemic changes have you made? I mean, to ensure that we are getting those women into leadership.
Maybe I will take. So I'm just taking on a new job as the Africa director, and my predecessor, Umar Saidi, who's our outgoing Africa director, he has been thinking about actually a target in terms of his leadership, from the beginning, because as you know, the Gates Foundation has been moving many of our roles, from Seattle, from DC to Africa. And, he made it clear that we need to have in our leadership 50% of male, 50% of female. And he has achieved that, which is a really great thing. And he will delay a recruitment to say, no, did you check? Did you talk to everyone? Did you make sure? Because sometimes we hire people that look like us, people that think like us, people that we know in our network, etc. But I think just thinking about it systematically and say, yeah, I may delay this recruitment for another couple of months, but I'm solving something bigger than this urgency, because there is a leadership trick, or there is a strategy, or there is something, I need someone to be in place. And the person who, is very close is someone who's very close to the work or connected, etc. But if you are deliberate and thinking about it, and making sure that you don't compromise some of your principles, and we have to close the gender gap. When I was looking at the data, like if as a world we need to wait 132 years to close the gender gap, I think everyone needs just to put some urgency, and it start from closing the silence gap, the hiring gap, the onboarding gap, etc. So systematically, then we can actually move as a community. But I have a question for you too, because tell us as males here, we're a minority here, but I think we will record this so that many males will hear. What are the things that sometimes you just go, from your workplace, etc., and then you go home, and then you talk to your spouse or to someone else, your significant other, and say, oh my God, my colleagues' male are so dumb. They don't have an idea. They didn't see that. What are those things that we don't see? What are those? Can you help us?
Femi, go ahead. Go ahead, Femi.
What do people not see from the work that I do? The dark side. There are battles that happen, and I know that we all understand this, that happen, and we call them internal conversations, right? I've had a number of internal conversations in the last 3 days about some major issues that we can't talk about in public, but happen behind the scenes. So, for instance, that project that I told you about that was about changing the culture and the system of a particular TV network, we wanted to take that network wide, and the person at the very top said no. It's like, we're not going to do that across the whole of the network. So we fought behind the scenes, and there's sometimes you think you lose the battle and you hopefully do not lose the war for that. But that is, you work out, how do I strategize around that, because it's not working. I think often when we sit in forums like this, we talk about what we did, how we succeeded, which is really, really, really important. But also, how do you regroup when you fail? So I failed to get the managing director of a major network to say, let's see what our gender parity looks like. There are not enough women who are in positions of power. How do we change that? There are not enough women on the air. Let's just count them and then fix that. And the answer was no. So then what do you do when you go home and work on that? How do you come up with strategies when you failed? That's what I think about a lot.
When you ask that, I look at as a support network, when you step into that area, you've succeeded in one aspect of it, but you're you're a drop in the ocean. And if I go back to my experience as the KMA president, so I'm president, but in a sea of men. So you're struggling with changing a culture, because you see, as a female, you bring in a totally different perception about how to run maybe the institution, but everyone you're working with is male. and you almost begin to feel like you're whining about everything, and where do you get the support in that context to sustain that change? And how do you draw on the strengths of, how do you build a pipeline of others who look like you within that institution? Someone has pulled you up, then how do you change that so that you can have that, that difference sustained? And within the association, I looked at it and I thought, it's going to be difficult, but I'm going to look at taking advantage of that new territory, because they had never been a female. Whatever I do, there's no benchmark. I can be the benchmark. I can be the trendsetter and say we can change this into this direction, because I had men also who were willing to listen. But I realized, more important, that I need a pipeline of other females along the way. So we're going to change this picture of Old Boys Club. Let's make it look a little more different. Some more women, younger doctors, young males, young females, and I began to get them to volunteer to do certain things, and it created what is a young doctors network, so that there's a pipeline, and in which there were many females joining within that pipeline, and so that those issues that I was struggling with, my hope is that I wouldn't have to struggle alone. I would have other females working with me in that context, influencing other men. And honestly, when I look back now, I finished my term 4 years ago, but right now the current executive has got some of those that I mentored then in the Young Doctors Network, females, 3 of them. So the top executive has 5 members, 3 of them are female, young ones. And they're not token females on the group. Treasurer, secretary, assistant secretary, the secretary general, and assistant secretary general. So they're powerful women within the association. So those things I struggled with, that modeling, that signaling that yes, it is possible, and that we had male allies who could say, yes, the women are doing a good job, let's support this one. And they all stood up and, they were elected. They were not nominated. They were elected. So those struggles I went back and thought through. That was my way for me, in terms of getting that transformation. But wouldn't have been possible if we didn't have the male allies speaking up and saying, yes, the women are doing a good job. They are worth voting for. Let's vote for this one.
As you were talking, I realized a lesson I've learned recently about the importance of allyship amongst women in addition to male allyship. And plug for the Johns Hopkins workshop that's happening after this on allyship in organizations. But some years ago, I was in a staff retreat, and it was an open, very well facilitated space where we could reflect on organizational culture. And talking about what was invisible, all of us in the closing circle shared very warm feelings about how well we connected. In the taxi on the way to the airport, I was with 2 female colleagues, and they said to each other, again, nothing has changed. This was a wonderful workshop, but I was so hopeful at the beginning. Again, nothing has changed. I asked them to explain that a little bit more. They did. And the analogy that came up for me was that I'm a third child. I'm 10 years younger than my 2 siblings. And it always felt like the action was up there with my brother and my sister. And I still, as an adult, I can speak on a stage in Tanzania, but I struggle to organize a family dinner for the 5 of us because I feel like I just have a bodily response to not being able to speak up when my 4 other family members are around. And I shared that with my two colleagues, and I said, that sounds like that. And my colleague responded and like, yes, it's like that. That's what every woman feels like in an organization. And I'm still, years later, I'm still feeling that visceral response to the emotional labor that it takes just to get to the point of speaking, of making a contribution in many cases. Not to be patronizing about it, but I really want to be sensitive to that. So in that case, there was a real value in female allyship amongst women in the organization. And I want to come back to caregiving again and just say that in an organization, when a senior male leader gives space to female colleagues, one way of doing that is by shutting up, by being quiet and not speaking, and sitting with what you think you have to contribute and not saying it. But the other way is to actually physically step away and spend time at home doing the care work. That is, and demonstrating that to other male colleagues. So in an earlier session this week, I mentioned the word, the allyship in the private space that's mostly invisible. And what I didn't say then was that women's care work at home is mostly invisible. It's not visible work. And it's time that men join doing the invisible work at home as a form of allyship, which would then create the systemic shift that would put pressure on media networks to actually respond to what the market is asking. That's the long-term vision. So our goal as Men Care is that 50-50, not representation, but that men do 50% of the unpaid care work. And I think it's a goal that will survive us. We will not achieve it in this lifetime, but it's not a goal that we're going to let go of.
If I could, yeah, is okay, Jacqueline? So yeah, if I could build on just a couple of the points. First of all, male allies and men at home think we do a lot more than we actually do. There's this disconnect between our self-perception and how the world perceives it, and frankly, what we actually do. And so I think walking in the shoes of others is critical to close that gap between self-image and what actually happens. The second point I'll make, building on Femi and Jacqueline's point, is that one of the most important business books I ever read was Good to Great by Jim Collins, and he talks about servant leadership, level 5 leadership, which to me is male, or allyship, servant leadership. That's the highest level of leadership, is to be a servant to those around you and a servant to the mission. And the second thing he talks about, I think to Jacqueline's point, is getting the right people on the bus before you figure out where to drive. And I think the research indicates getting a diverse leadership team, high-performing teams are diverse teams from different backgrounds, experiences, cultures. And so until you get, or at least until we got at MSI, that diverse leadership team, tackling the fundamental structural and systemic issues that then manifested themselves in the microaggressions and the biases, unconscious and conscious, that manifested themselves in the discriminatory practices. We were just fighting little battles all the time until we went after these root causes. People here at this conference have talked about, and there was a great question just yesterday about, do you need feminist leadership or do you need female leaders? And my response to that great question is yes. You need feminist leadership, but you need representation, you need voice and power amongst this diverse group of people in order to really make a systemic, fundamental, and root cause change.
Thanks both for that input and how cultural norms and and societal expectations, what can we do in terms of countering some of those two as male allies? But Femi, I have something specific for you. Now that the audience is majority women, can women more actively engage and bring along their male counterparts and bosses? I'm asking from the female perspective, but it would be nice to hear from you as well, Paula. Let's see, how can women actively bring along their male counterparts and bosses as allies?
Do you mind if I share this with the audience?
Sure.
Because you're asking me how can women?
Yes.
And we have women here.
Absolutely.
All right. So we also have, I want to introduce you to the three ushers. Jeremy, hello. come into the aisle and put your hand up with a microphone. And then also we have Barak. Hello, Barak. All right, Barak, hand up so everybody can see you. And then we also have Rachel. Hi, Rachel. Where are the responses in the room to that? Because I think, Jacqueline, that was a really good question, but I do not stand for all women.
Absolutely, and the audience is majority women.
Rachel, there's one hand up there. Okay, stand up. Great, then Rachel can see you. Great, thank you.
Thank you so much. My name is Dr. Irene Ketegwe. I am from Tanzania, and I recently founded a public health and green consultant firm. First of all, I'd love to appreciate the vulnerability that the panelists showed us. I think it's highly commendable. And I come from a family of 11 children, and 9 of us are girls. And I think most of us have gotten to the seats that we're sitting at right now because of male allies. But as most people have shared, they also go through challenges from other men and women also. So I think maybe we could start a movement appreciating and acknowledging the male allies that we have in our lives. Absolutely. What about that? The bosses that push us at work, give us a pat in the back and just push us to keep moving. Our families, our spouses, our fathers, maybe we should start with that. I don't know what the women think about that, but I was actually thinking, even for the men that were bold enough to join us, to even apply for WomenLift. I'm not sure all of us knew it was an organization while we were applying to attend. Maybe we could just appreciate them and their willingness. Thank you.
That's brilliant. Let's appreciate those men who are our allies openly. Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. So I just have to add on to what she was saying here. So this is for Dana actually. When Dana was actually leading Mary Stopes and I got an opportunity to join Mary Stopes in 2010, I have a very, very strong reference of a very strong male ally in the country director that time, and I think that was taken from your own leadership style at that point. I was interviewed when I had recently realized that I had conceived. And as part of my interview, I did mention to then country director, and I'm sure you know who I'm referring to. And I said that I've recently conceived, very, very strongly believing that I will not be hired because I will soon be moving on to a maternity leave. And I still remember that response that if I don't take you, I will be defying the very principles that Mary Stopes stands for. And I was hired. The entire maternity leave policy was built around me because that was a flagship program in India. There was not much of a big team, and I'm sure you know that. And so the policy was defined around me. There was childcare policy that was defined around me and my situation. And when I came back from my maternity leave, I was given a promotion. I was made the state lead for Rajasthan state in India. And I was also given a pay parity to the person who actually was moving out, which was almost double the pay that I was getting. And I was, so there was, what I want to bring in here, that power of a genuine and an authentic male allyship and the decisions that you take made me give my all. I worked as a woman who owed everything to the organization because I could take care of my child right there at the office. I could breastfeed my child right there at the office. There were systems that were put up for me. I was made to feel so important as an asset for the organization that I also felt indebted to the organization to give it my all. And lastly, another very, very strong example of male allyship, when I actually decided to leave Mary Stopes, I was expecting my second child. I actually had 2 children while being in Mary Stopes. So, yeah. So when I was deciding to leave, because I wanted to take a break with 2 young children, I was actually relieved after my maternity leave got over. I was not relieved before that. How many women can really say that they had the beautiful male allyship. And this has made me so strong as I sit here today, because I can very confidently say that I'm here because of very, very intelligent, honest, genuine male allies that I've seen in my life. And I wish that everybody has those very beautiful experiences.
Oh, thank
you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to the back. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ananya Banerjee from McGill University. I really appreciate this panel, and thank you for just being such strong male allies. I wanted to hear from your perspective, because the term allyship, has been critiqued, and what we're really looking for is co-conspirators. And how do we get males to actually abolish and dismantle patriarchy, and to actually have the ability to give up power? As much as I am who I am today, because I do have strong male mentors who have supported me, who have helped me. But I want to get to a point where I want to see my male counterparts, particularly historically and contemporary to this day, just hold a lot of power, to actually give it up, so I can finally enter a room without not having any reliance on males. Thank you.
All right. Who would like to take that one? It's very pointed. Yeah. Basically, how do you get?
How do you give up power? I think that's
yes,
it's like the elephant in the room, right?
Yeah.
It's a brilliant question.
No, that's a very good one. I think I take it two sides. One is just to be empathetic, always to think about the others, and to make sure that, because most of the time where we work, power is in information. Because sometimes people come with different level of information, in any meetings. And most of the information and decision power, you're talking about the internal conversation that happens. Some of those conversations happens outside of the boardroom, out of the meeting, out of the everyday work. But males have the opportunity to connect outside of work. But as managers or colleagues, we need to think about creative ways to make sure that when we come for a decision, we've shared that information. We've heard the perspective of women as well. COVID taught me a lot, because when we're working from home, I'll be in a Zoom call or team calls and review grant and make decision about 1 million, 2 million grants. When I'll come to the kitchen to grab my cup of coffee, I'll have a conversation with my wife and about a $250 decision. I'll make it quickly, and then she'll just crush it in a second with a very strong argument. I'll realize, oh my God, yeah, she's right. Then I realize, am I really listening to my other women colleagues? Because they may have different perspectives. So as males, the first thing we really need to do is to think about bringing women to those conversations. Finding creative ways. I know it's different in the US or in Africa, etc. In the US, the way I do it, for example, I have kids, one of them plays soccer. Sometimes I know it's difficult to go for a drink after work with my female colleague. But I will invite them to my house and say, can we go together for my son's soccer? And then she'll be, oh yeah, I'll bring my son too, or my daughter too. And then there we'll have very good conversation, because she's very comfortable. Or connect them with home, etc. So then when I go to official meetings, I've heard the perspective of my female colleague, my male colleague, so I can, as a manager, I can share that. Then, the most important one, I'll close by this, is having the courage to share power, to give us power, because what I've learned, it gives you more power. Doesn't decrease your power, not at all. For us at the Gate Foundation is who sent that email to Bill and Melinda and Mark or our president. Like sometimes I'll just say, no, you send it because you did the work. Or when the leader responds, you say, you know what, you ping them on the side, you say, you have the response, can you respond to that? And then they start that conversation, and then they realize, oh, wow, that's really good. But then you realize as a manager, by the way, it didn't even diminish your power, because you continue, you manage. Is that the ability to, for male to be able to just give it? Because the more you give, the more you receive.
But there's the courage to give up that power. Yes, Dave.
Yeah, this is such a great question. I think this is foundational to everything. I mean, WomenLift, I truly believe, is on the right side of history. And this is the future, but the future is just coming so slowly. And I think it's because patriarchy in society and patriarchy in organizations is so deeply embedded that it's just inching forward. And Pauline will know all of these leaders, but there was 5 of us white male leaders at the Gates Foundation who got together and said, about a year before I left, I think our time has come. We need to step aside. But easing out of organizations is not easy, I think. Giving up power and privilege is really, really hard. And so expecting men to actually do this is maybe asking a lot. This is where the conversation around boards and going above the CEO to the board. And I'm discouraged that so few board members are women, but I really think that's a point of attack, because then you can actually start to ease out men in leadership positions with special advisor, but ease them out, make them feel important. They can be still important, but just differently important, not the same importance.
I love that, calmly ease them out.
Can I tell you one practical way that we did it on a broadcast was that we would be very transparent about what we were doing. We were trying to be gender equal on screen, and we would say, we love you, but we would like you to nominate a worthy woman from your organization to take your place. We only had, in about 5 years, one argument. Because once we explained what we were doing, the men were like, absolutely, I know the perfect person for you. Vessel's been on the stream, so obviously we didn't have to replace him. But it's a really nice way of actually just being very transparent and asking, and invariably, men will see that it's fair and share their space in the spotlight.
Absolutely. I think then appreciate the privilege they have. Because I think we haven't talked about the male privilege, but some of those are the ways that they push. Oh my goodness, I actually am privileged that someone doesn't have to ask. I don't have to ask for a space to be in a place. So it just sort of opens up their eyes to what it is. Yeah, we'll take the next question.
Thank you. My name is Kola Matovo, an alum of WomenLift Health, Northern California. Northern America, and also the interim director of global health at the University of Utah, and a nurse by training and professor there. I wanted to follow through, from the comment that was made by Mr. Basinga about what do we talk about when we have interacted with individuals that you would think are allies within our areas or within our settings that often miss the point. And it's something to what we could do to be able to educate those individuals. I think it all comes down to mindful inclusion, mindful allyship, and structural changes that are needed to actually support women when they're in that role. As a nurse by profession, I'm in a predominantly female profession, and we are the largest healthcare workforce, but often we are missing at the stages and the panels in global health where we are often meant to be. And so having allies, male allies, physician allies who can say, I'm not going to be on that panel if there is no nurse who needs to be at that table and engage in that conversation is important. I have an experience where I had to speak out about that to a leader who happens to be male and say we are not represented as women, as a predominantly female profession at some of these conversations and tables and rooms. And he says, oh, that reminds me, we have an upcoming panel. Would you like to be a part of it? He missed the point. Again, having that support, but also being very mindful about including individuals and having some long-term strategies as opposed to short-term tactical wins for gender or other kinds of inclusion. So I'm curious what some of you in your work have actually engaged in to ensure some long-term strategies to support inclusion and allyship.
No, it's a very good one. I think also we started this when we were working with Dana about not joining, manuals and, really declining manuals. This was one of the very, rare manuals that we were kind of willing to do. But I'll go a little bit, I think, sending women to more, panel and conferences, etc., is a really good exposure. But as male allies, if you are truly an ally, you need to go beyond panels. Because the panel, they give you visibility, they give you all that, but not necessarily job and power and position, etc. So you need to think about maybe not panel, but closed door meetings where a leader will be making decision, where you can actually expose and even sometimes excuse yourself so that she can truly shine. Then there will be a decision, right? Because panel is good. I can, send you to a panel and you will travel more. Sometimes it's difficult to manage with the families, etc. But I think just being mindful and say, you know what, for this leadership trip, I'm declining it. If you go and spend time with this leader in the field, they will actually have a completely different view of who you are and your work, etc. Then it will open up an opportunity for them to see you as a potential leader here, right? Like exposing them to that. Just to give a concrete example, one of my colleagues, I was leading some of our work in Nigeria, and Melinda wanted to go to the field, in rural, Nigeria, in a state. And then I say, no, you are going. De facto, people thought, oh, no, Paulin will go. I was like, no, I'm not going. I can support you there, but if I'm there, de facto, people see me as the person. But you've been doing that work, you go. And it has changed it has impacted, not changed, it has impacted how that colleague actually moved within the organization, because of that really critical time they spent with a leader in the field.
Thank you, thank you. I think we can take a couple more questions. Femi, time-wise?
So we're going to do this really swiftly. So there's going to be one here or one here, and you're going to have a 30-second question and a 30-second question here, and then we're going to wrap it up and send you away to the workshops that will start just before 10 a.m. because we've just pushed it back a little bit. Yes, please, go ahead.
Okay, I've gotten my note on briefness. Thank you, Lauren Wall. I'm part of the North America cohort of WomenLift. I work at an organization called PATH. Thanks to our panelists and to the others that have asked questions. Something I've been considering during this panel is that gender norms are harmful, not just to women. Gender norms are harmful to men and boys. Gender norms are harmful to non-binary people. And so what is the role of changing gender norms rather than just advancing women? And how does that come through in your work in being male allies? Thank you.
Who wants to take that up? Dana?
Sure. No, thank you, and really, really happy to hear that question. Thank you for saying that. So just one data point, the International Men and Gender Equality Survey shows, sadly, a rise in conservative attitudes, so less agreement with gender equality amongst younger men than we saw in an earlier generation. I think one response, and it comes back to the systemic issue in terms of gender norms. Again, I go back to an ethic of care and men's engagement in caregiving as a way to shift gender norms and make care more normalized amongst boys and men. One point is to balance the engagement of women and young girls in STEM career tracks with men and boys engaging in HEAL career tracks. So health, education, administration, and literacy. My first job was as a kindergarten teacher. I worked as an elementary school teacher. Not because I was thinking in any feminist way, but mostly because my girlfriend was studying that at the time. But I landed in that position and then realized, oh, this is mostly a female-constructed profession. So I do think if we're deliberate about not only putting female astronauts, surgeons, and firefighters in front of children, but also putting male nurses, male elementary school teachers, male administrators in front of classrooms, children might become encouraged to change some of those norms.
If I could just jump in real quickly. So I was at the Hewlett Foundation before I moved to Portugal recently, and there we developed a pretty important strategy around funding feminist movements. Understanding that the waters that our organizations swim in are patriarchal and are sometimes misogynist and discriminatory. And so if you don't change the ocean that you're swimming in, the organizational work is going to be for naught, or at least swimming upstream. So I do think that is part of the equation of changing gender norms. We have to change the world around us. And feminist movements, I think, is hard for philanthropy to fund because philanthropy likes to tell people what to do, and that's exactly what you shouldn't do with feminist movements.
Okay, we'll take the next question.
The last question.
Thank you very much. Irene Mayaka, Member of Parliament from Kenya. I just want to ask this in terms of male allyship at the home front, at the family front, and these are your fathers, your brothers, your husbands. And the reason why I want to ask this question is because a few years ago I had an experience where I was just starting my political career, and my ex-husband didn't like that. So he gave my dad an ultimatum that your daughter has to choose between me or her political career. And my dad said, political career comes first because that's who she is. And why I want to ask this is because, and this is probably an experience for very many young women who are just starting their different careers. What would you say to the younger you who is a male in the family front in terms of holding the hand of their spouses, their partners, their sisters in terms of male allyship? Thank you.
Thank you for bringing
Could we
that
have
back.
had a more perfect final question?
Absolutely.
Which will be answered in 30 seconds by each panelist. I would tell my younger selves to be maybe less confident. Leave other spaces for other people, but I think to enjoy the journey. I was so keen to have an amazing resume when I was 15. And now I'm taking stuff off my resume because it's too much to get me hired anywhere. And I think we're so keen when we're young to do so much. And I think you can enjoy that journey. There's so much pleasure from the journey.
True.
I think I would tell my younger self that.
Yeah. I think even, I know you, Polan, you're getting ready for that. That question has really made me think back to something. We are talking at institutional level, and yet we're forgetting each and every one of us comes from a family. You have, it's a husband or a wife or a parents, brothers. There's other people as well who are male allies who we don't speak about. The lady there said, we should speak about our male allies. And indeed, those are the people who actually even push you out of the door to the other males in the institutions. So that role of our partners, very important people, because they're the ones who will get you there. When I said, I want to stand for president, my dad was like, I've always told you can do what you want, you can be what you want to be. And my husband was my #1 campaigner, even before I was very sure that I should stand. He would go to places and introduce, this is my wife, she's Dr. Jacqueline Kitulu, and she's going to be the next president. I'm like, so, but that actually is male allyship, and from one who is so close. So it's an area we don't really speak about, but that's very critical. Because wherever you'll go, even in the institution, you'll have all those male allies. But if you don't have an ally at home, you're in trouble. So, but Polan,
it's a really good question. I think most of the time you'll see, young people with a lot of potential. But with this new world of AI, etc., it seems like things becomes a little bit easier. You can just put a code and then you get a result. But to build really strong management in global health, for example, there are things that you need to do systematically, and you need to to get some really grounded experience, right? So we need to talk about the need to actually be there at the district or follow a project for 4, 5, 6 years. You design the project, you implement the project, you evaluate the project, and then you scale it up, etc. Most of our young people don't have that experience. They jump on a project, 6 months, they jump to another one, and then they need to move. Then we realize, but what is your experience? But then when they are women, sometimes they have to build the family, etc. I think as a good male ally, you need to see those people and then help them stay with a project for a long time, including if they have to build a family, you create ways, and we've been really privileged at the Gate Foundation with a very generous parental leave. And when you do that, you make sure that you wait for them to come back, and then they pick it up, and then they continue, etc., so that they can actually own that project. Just having that, their back, and making sure that, if someone is backing them up when they're in parental leave, they're backing up. Don't change your mind later on. When they come back, help them move it back and so they can continue, etc. So just being mindful of that would be really
Thank you, Pavan. Dana, you want to?
Yeah, very quickly. I know we're running out of time, but I think building on what Femi said, I would tell my 25-year-old self to not be in such a rush, not take yourself so seriously, believe in yourself that it's going to be okay. When I was 30, I said I want to be a CEO of a major organization by the time I was 40, and I was just monomaniacal about that. And when I look back on this, I now have a 16-year-old son and a 13-year-old daughter, and for much of their youth, I was sort of emotionally or physically, because of travel, absent. And now I'm around. My wife is pursuing her career, and I am supporting her in that. And my kids actually don't want to hang out with me very much anymore. When they do, but I want to be available immediately because they're not going to wait 2 minutes. So that's what I tell myself, is don't be in a rush, believe in yourself, and it'll come right, maybe just not when you're 40.
Vessel? Yeah, all right. But, that question also reminded me of a little anecdote. I remember sitting in for a senior doctor, a male doctor, and I came in and, goes back to what male allyship does in terms of modeling. And this child came into the room and looked at me and told his mom, "Mommy, it's a girl doctor." His image was, the doctor is a male, so what do you mean there's a girl doctor? But in that male allyship, to your question, that to the young people, it's the modeling, that what they see, that yes, we support, those are the people we are promoting, that women can be up in leadership. And as we wind up, I know, Polan, you really wanted to have, your final words. Just a brief final word from the three powerful male allies we've had today.
So, yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Jacqueline. Care matters, and invisible allyship is really important as a dimension of male allyship.
Thank you.
I think, male, we need to up our emotional intelligence and read beyond the room how other people are looking at women, really try to up that game a little bit, and then collectively work towards closing that gap.
And I loved some of the comments over here, and I'll end where I started, which is that women have the agency and the power in their relationship with male allies. And male allies, if you're true male allies, you want to be guided and you want to be led in this. And that could be positive reinforcement by saying, thank you for stepping up in that meeting. Thank you for addressing these structure issues. Or it can be some critical reinforcement, but without judgments. Because if you do want to do the right thing, but just come off the wrong way, grace really helps to reorient the male ally in a way that they want to be constructive, so help them to be constructive.
And Femi, just before you get back into your other role, let's have your final word, and we can close.
When you're making change, people will tell you that let's do it next conference, next year, next time. We can't do it right now. Ask why, and then do it.
Thank you, thank you. And thank you to our wonderful panel. Thank you to our very interactive audience, and for giving us your time very early on Monday morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Thank you, gentlemen. What a novel experience for me to be on a panel. How enjoyable. All right. So, I know workshop leaders have been looking at their watches. There's been a slight time change. And so the workshops that you're going to now will run from as soon as you can get to your room until 11:15. So that will be just over an hour and 15 minutes. And then the tea break will be 11:15 to 11:30. And then the second workshops will run until 1:15, and then lunch will be 45 minutes. So the workshops are shortened by 15 minutes each. And then lunch is slightly shorter as well, just so that we could really hear from the plenary and get all of that in and all of your sessions as well. One more message from me, and then I will let you get on and move on through your day. And that is, if you are traveling today or tomorrow, please go to the information desk. Let them know when you are leaving, what hotel you are in, so that we can get you home. All right, enjoy the workshop. Again, plenary, panel, Jacqueline, Dana, Vessel, Palan, thank you so much. Appreciate you. Thank you for your excellent questions. Enjoy your next sessions.